Heart to Heart is where real stories meet real connection. Hosted by Felix Diaz, founder of Heartful Living. This podcast opens the door to honest, unfiltered conversations about life's most meaningful and sometimes messy chapters. From personal journeys of resilience and healing to experiences with love, loss, family, and finding purpose, Heart to Heart is a space for the stories that deserve to be heard. Every episode is rooted in authenticity, empathy, and the belief that when we share our stories, we remind each other we're not alone. Join the conversation because the best talks always come from the heart. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of our Heart to Heart podcast. I'm Felix Diaz, and I am here with a whole bunch of new friends of mine that you probably have not seen on the podcast before, but I'm pretty sure you've spoken or heard from their spouses before because your spouse was here at one point. It takes a village to raise kids. I'm always saying that. And I had the privilege of hearing Adam Newman speak at the America Business Forum earlier this week. He has 6 kids. I don't know how he and his wife, Rebecca, do it. But they once said that Miami's superpower is community. I could not agree more because this is my extended community here today, my extended tribe that we are all raising our kids together. And I'm so excited. It's taken a lot of timing for them to come into the studio. Number one, I wanted to make them proud. And number two, to get on their schedules is just damn impossible. So without further ado, I'd like everyone in this room to introduce themselves, starting with my media naranja over here.
Danny Diaz Leyva, the proud spouse of Felix Diaz.
And what do you do, Danny Diaz? How many kids do you have?
I am an attorney, and I have 2 children, 13 and 11, Danny and Adriana.
Hi, I'm Jose Felix Diaz, also known as Pepe, born and raised in Miami. I have 3 amazing kids, a 15-year-old son, a 13-year-old son, and a 7-year-old daughter, which keeps me up at night. And I am a lawyer and a lobbyist, so I do a lot of government affairs work here in Miami and in Washington and Tallahassee.
Nice. Ryan Holtzman. My beautiful wife is Sophia Holtzman, who's been on your show. It was an excellent episode, so thank you for that. And I have 3 beautiful kids, Luke and Gabrielle, 12-year-old twins, and Cruzy, who's 4 years old and basically runs our house.
Yeah. So if you haven't had the opportunity to listen to the foundations leading up to Heartful Living, our first season, you can find his beautiful wife, Sophia Holtzman, in our 2 episodes. Part 1 was 121 days in the NICU from their beautiful twins. And then part 2 was their COVID surprise, which was baby Cruz.
That's right.
That's right. So without further ado, let's get started. We have so much ground to cover, gentlemen. I want to start by saying that something that is very uniquely Miami is that when you ask a Miamian born and raised, where did you go to school? It has nothing to do with their university. It has to do with where did they go to school in Miami? And it's something that only Miami natives today can really understand. And you're smiling and nodding because that's all we really care about. Where'd you go to school? It kind of puts the identity on the map, if you will. So I want to start by saying, where did you go to school?
So I went to Palmer Trinity School, graduated in 1998. Proud Palmer alum, where my children now go to school.
I would say Brendan High grad, which I'm very proud to be on the board of. I think you're on the board of Palmer also.
I am.
And it was a very middle-class school in Westchester where 98% of the kids I went to school with were Hispanic. Most of those were Cuban. And I had a blessed 4 years in high school, and that's why I'm still very involved in the school.
Let's back up a minute because Danny didn't mention. I've known Danny since middle school, since the Carver days.
Yes, sir.
When Danny had a shaved head, and that's a whole different life. We'll talk about that maybe on another episode. But my growing up, it was amazing because my parents put me at Sunset Elementary, where I believe you started as well.
That's right.
And, from a gringo family, and I was fluent in Spanish within 3 years. And it's one of the best things my parents ever did. And went to Carver, and then from Carver to Ransom. And I was on the board of Ransom for 12 years and finally got termed out. But amazing friends, amazing experience, and my 3 kids are now at Gulliver. So
That's
we
right.
have a Raider fight
But
right now.
Danny's much older than you.
No.
Yeah. I think,
Much
I
older.
think like 6 or 7 years,
Yeah,
actually.
easy.
Yeah.
Me too. He's much older than me.
That's not very nice.
So I'm a Gulliver lifer, K through 12. Very hard to find those these days. It's very interesting because Miami then and Miami now are 2 completely different cities. And that's what I want to dive into today. The Miami that we're raising our children in is a much different place than the Miami we grew up in. And there's so many added layers to that. And with your backgrounds and your knowledge, I want to know how we got there to there. But without getting to the end, we need to start at the beginning. And I want to know what it was like for you guys growing up in Miami in the 80s and 90s.
Well, I'll start. I had a great childhood, blessed. My parents, both Cuban exiles, born in Havana, left when they were 8 and 6. And, you can't have a conversation about Miami without, starting there, the Cuban exile experience. And, all of us grew up in a Miami that, we're very proud of, in spite of its, humble origins. A lot of the Cuban exile community came with the clothes on their back and kind of started over again and, just brought their culture of hard work and dedication and family and faith and restarted. And I'm a product of that. And so, I went to a very small, preschool, Coral Gables Congregational Church across the street from the Biltmore. My mother went to St. Teresa up the street when she came from Cuba. And so, we really have, had a sense of community around this area. My mother grew up Catholic. She instilled those values of faith and religious tradition in me. And it was wonderful. I mean, it's really kind of rooted me in this community. But, it was fun. I mean, we played sports. I played baseball and soccer. My dad coached my teams. My mother obviously helped my father tremendously around the house. They were both very active, present parents. They just instilled a certain level of love and appreciation in me. My grandmother was very present in my life, which is another unique thing that, grandparents, because of the exile community, everybody pitched in and supported each other and created an incredible sense of community at home. And she was kind of like a second mom, right? So she drove me to school while my mom and my dad both worked, for several years. And my mom actually didn't stay at home until my sister was born 9 years later. So, we had a very different experience and a different upbringing, but it was amazing. I mean, I never, complained once about my childhood. I would leave the front door, hop on a bike, and I was gone most of the day. My parents didn't have any way to connect with me or call me or text me or beep me or anything like that. That came much later.
Those were the days.
And it was awesome. I mean, obviously we got into a healthy amount of trouble and I think that's part of growing up. But obviously the values that your parents instilled in you kind of created guardrails around what you did and you didn't do. So it was great. I had an incredible upbringing. It was free. It was independent and full of love.
Pepe, I love when you refer to your childhood as the Sandlot days. It makes me
100%.
very nostalgic. Can you elaborate on that?
Very much like Danny. Like, it sounded like he was describing my childhood just like in a much nicer neighborhood. So I grew up in Westchester, kind of heading towards the unincorporated part of Dade County. I think I had less neighbors and more alligators than anybody I knew. I actually thought that the world ended kind of like where I was, and like,
Right.
Coral Gables and Little Havana, all these vibrant neighborhoods now. I had no clue they existed because everybody I knew was west of the Palmetto. But I grew up very much like Danny in a very sports-centric environment. My dad was a baseball coach at Tamiami Park. He coached me for 10 plus years. I think that they made him the coach because I was so bad at baseball that the only way I could get on a team was if my dad was the coach and my grandparents were the sponsors. But I eventually learned to love baseball and became pretty good at it enough to, play early through the early part of my high school. And I just had this amazing group of friends. We all went to different schools. We all grew up in the same way, and we lived on a bicycle. We would get on a bike in the morning in the summer, and you wouldn't see your parents again till night, and you would show up at your friend's house. You call your parents, and you say, hey, I'm at Mario's house, I'm at Danny's house, I'm at Carlos's house. And I don't think parents question much other than, do you need me to make food?
Yeah.
Or are you guys going to come back here? We jumped into each other's pools. I got a ton of ear infections in the neighborhood from poorly clean pools. And we loved that experience. I remember the movie Sandlot, and it felt like what we went through. And there's like a line at the end where they're like reminiscing and doing like a montage of them playing. And like the narrator says something like, we didn't know it then, but that would be the last game we played together. And so that's always like a very emotional thing to think of, because we spend so much time together. Now we're grown adults with kids. And I had a neighborhood reunion at my house about a month and a half ago.
Cool.
And
Wow.
everybody from the neighborhood came, and we played basketball and we played baseball and we went in the pool, and the kids had a day very much like the one we grew up with. And it felt amazing. Like there was just such vibrant feelings of nostalgia and positivity that we were almost reclaiming our youth
Right.
in a way that I'm sure you're going to ask about later, that our kids haven't been able to experience the same
Right.
wholesome, free environment. And we'll definitely talk about that later, because I think that that is part of the reason why we have kids with more anxiety and kids with nature deprivation syndrome and all these kids that are growing up with a lot more mental health issues, because they're more connected to their phone than they are to their neighborhood and their friends.
Right. Ryan, you must have been a very active child, just knowing you like I know you today. And you were also the baby of the family. I can't even imagine the trouble you must have gotten into as a child running amok in your community, in your neighborhood. Aren't you glad there's no cameras back then that could share that story?
goodness.
Thank God social media didn't exist.
I mean, I couldn't get away with anything with his white pack, first and foremost. So, yeah, I mean, my childhood was amazing, similar to you guys. Grew up in the Kendall area and moved to the Gables. I think I was like 9 or 10 years old. And it was just like Pepe described, riding our bikes every day, hanging out with our neighbors, almost like it was when we had COVID here, where you're outside,
Right.
you're hanging out with everyone you know in your neighborhood.
Without mask.
Without masks.
Yeah.
And
true.
and I think, those were the days. Like, it was the Sandlot days, like
Right.
you said. And I think it's changed a lot. And I think that we need to put more emphasis on doing that with our kids and getting more involved with our communities like that.
And I think that story, the Sandlot movie,
Yeah.
really appeals to everybody in our generation. But then you show it to your kids, and they gravitate towards it also because it feels so foreign to them.
Absolutely.
You know?
No phones, no way of communicating, no rings on the cameras that's reporting if they're running behind a peacock or, throwing a mango off of a tree. There was no accountability almost. They could do whatever. They could throw the rock and nobody knew which hand had thrown it.
That's right.
I think that has a lot to do with it too. They were much simpler times.
I wonder the level of connection that our kids will have kind of going forward, right? Because I think that one of the incredible things that we have is our connection, right? Like over the course of our life, like we've spent so much time together, and it wasn't communicating through a phone and text messaging or social media. Like we actually played sports together. We were in the trenches, competing together, and I think that really helps you develop relationships with
Dude,
people.
when you needed an answer, you'd be like, oh, I think I know who could give me the answer. I'm going to call Danny. And these kids now are asking AI all day. And so one of their strongest friendships in life is their relationship with ChatGPT or Grok or whoever AI they're using.
Yeah.
Like that is now replacing human connection. And I think that if you study it, they're starting to see that, IQs are being affected, proficiency in language skills are being affected because people have easy answers at the palm of their hands. It's like they're gods.
Well, it's the critical thinking skills that the kids are missing out, because instead of trying to solve the problem, they're just going to ChatGPT.
Yeah. And that, obviously problem solving is resilience, right? Like,
Right.
Having a problem, facing it, figuring out how to solve it. I mean, that's such a huge, critical thinking,
For sure.
skill that you need to have.
People don't realize that jumping on a bike and having to find your friend's house is actually a critical thinking skill. And in today's world, if you drop any of our younger kids off on a street
They'll
corner,
never find the
They'll
house.
never find
they'll
out.
never find the house. I've run little tricks on my kids of, okay, everybody, I'm stopping the car. You guys have to get me home. And
I like that.
oh yeah, you'd be surprised where you end up when they're not looking out the window.
Yeah.
It's funny because my daughter, who has a keener sense of direction, she's like, okay, stop at the McDonald's and go to CVS. I go, how do you get to CVS? She goes, I don't know. Right?
Well, one of the things that they say is you conquer fears by falling, right? So if you look at somebody that falls off a tree as a kid, they're less likely to be afraid of heights.
Yeah.
But that's why you have a predisposition to anxiety, because these kids have never fallen.
Hey, my friends, it's Christy from Heartful Living. I wanted to share something special for my friend, the olive oil hunter, TJ Robinson. He runs the Fresh Pressed Olive Oil Club, where members receive small batch, rare olive oils flown in fresh from award-winning family farms around the world. Oils you simply can't buy in stores. To welcome you, he's offering a $39 bottle for just $1 shipping. To receive this offer today, please go to my website, heartfulliving.com, and sign up. It's a taste of what the club is all about, and the perfect way to bring intentional, heartful living right to your table.
Right. So how do you think the anxiety of dads, our dads, has changed to the anxiety you as dads have in Miami today? Because parenting in Miami has changed so much in 30 years. And why do you think that is, Ryan? You have a much older father as well. So do you feel, for example, that your dad, by the time he got to you, was just tired?
Definitely. I mean, he was 52 when I was born.
I mean, that's
right?
crazy.
And he's a bull. He's 95 and going strong. Yeah, I think the relationships for back then is different than it is now. I think we're a lot more involved in our kids' lives in every aspect. I mean, whether it's homework, we're all over our kids for homework. My parents were never on me for homework. I just kind of figured it out on my own. Again, critical thinking and doing it on your own. I think we're more involved in our kids' sports. I think we're more involved with our kids' friends and then their parents. I think we're more involved. I think they're going to be our best friends, when they're adults, which is, I think, the true definition of success is when your kids want to hang out with you when you're older.
I love that.
And that's my goal. I don't care how well I do in my career. I don't care how much money I make. It's, will my kids be hanging with me when I'm older?
So the negative version of that is the helicoptering, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Which is very prevalent. And I think that you actually have to consciously strive to let them fall. Let them fall, let them fail. I think that the overzealous parenting is detrimental to children. My 13-year-old son lives on his bike like I did. Like the other day, he had a funny incident at home, and he said, "I think I saw a ghost." And I talked to him about it. We had a conversation, and it was like a Saturday. On Sunday, he takes off in his bike. He comes home later. I'm like, "Where were you?" He's like, "Well, I went to St. John Newman to talk to a priest."
Wow.
No, from
St.
your
John
house?
Newman's like 5 miles away from my house. And he figured out how to get there. He met with the priest. He told him what happened to him the day before. The priest told him he was going to be fine. And he came back home, and he had like a totally adjusted, perfect situation. And I think that most parents would freak out about that. Oh my God, you crossed 107th and you crossed Kendall. But I did that. I did that a million times over, and I'm alive.
Yeah.
And look, there are horrible things that happen. And Miami is a much more unsafe place for pedestrians and for bicyclists than it was when we were growing up.
Right.
But, I think he's going to be a better adult and a better human being because he's bold, he's unafraid, and he lets his passions and convictions guide him. And I'm trying not to stifle that because he's such an impressive human being. So,
Pepe,
that might be an exception.
That's an exception to the rule. Apart from the fact that we've got way too much traffic today to get to where he was going, right? Are you not fearful? And do you think that because we know too much today, that's why we're more scared?
I think that if you listen to again, and I've read a lot of parenting books, Anxious Generation and Glow Kids and all these things, is we've never lived in a more safe time than now. Yeah. When we were growing up, it was infinitely less safe than it is now for everything that you're mentioning and not saying, right?
And Miami in particular, because Miami was not safe when we were growing up.
Yeah, there were bad people, bad things were happening. Now we have Life 360 and cell phones and other things. The one thing I ask my son is not to be alone. He typically goes with a neighbor or a friend. That gives me some comfort if something were to happen. The other one could immediately call for help. It's a struggle. I'm not saying that I'm totally okay with him going 5 miles, but I'm just saying I'm not also punishing him for doing that because there was a really cool part about what he did.
Yeah.
And I rode 5 miles a lot.
Yeah.
If it was your daughter, all three of you, would you have been more concerned that it was
more concerned.
your daughter?
My 13-year-old son's a giant gorilla.
Right.
He's a big boy. He could defend himself and his friends, right? My daughter's 7 and she's little and tiny and very, very susceptible to force.
Right.
So for sure, she cannot do that. Maybe if she's older, she's traveling with her male cousins that could help defend her. Like we would have a different conversation. But my childhood was very different than my sister's, even then.
Sure.
Like my sisters weren't going on a bike all day and coming back at night.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, my kids aren't doing that. I mean,
Right.
and I think they're missing out on some things. At the same time, we're so busy. I mean, they come home from school and we're going straight to practice, right? So it's like they don't have time, and that kind of innocence where you just kind of go hang out with your friends nowadays. I think with it, whether it's sports, whether it's music or art, whatever the kids are into, their schedules are packed.
Yeah.
I mean,
Do you think this is local to Miami
No.
or nationwide?
It's
I
everywhere in the
think,
world.
I think it's everywhere.
Me too.
I think it's everywhere. But at the same time, it's like great bonding time. So twice a week, I drive Luke to Columbus. He's on the Brothers United lacrosse team. He's also on the Gulliver lacrosse team. And I get, 45 minutes with him in the car. I get to coach him and be with him and see his friends and meet his friends' parents from all walks of life, right? And then I also get, half an hour back with him. And
Right.
same with Gabrielle. So these are moments that we make in the car, and we deep dive into a lot of topics that, kids aren't really comfortable talking about, when they're just busy going and going. So
Well, I heard a wonderful story from your wife that she ended up having to tell your children about the birds and the bees in a car ride home,
Yeah.
just facing the street forward.
I'm glad I wasn't there for that.
And they were like, ew. And it was all three, all the way from his 4-year-old on. But, those are the best conversations, the one in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah. I drove carpool for 5 years. And the days that it was my turn, I do have videos, DVDs in my car, but I always made sure that the movie that was on was something that would prompt a conversation. And lo and behold, it did. We had tons of conversations about Harry Potter and his coming of age because that was the movie that they were constantly playing.
That's
Did you
very
know
cool.
that?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah,
And it's a great way to introduce them to music.
absolutely.
That's kind of my thing. If
Yeah.
I'm taking them to school or picking
And
them
to
up.
wizards.
Wizards.
Very important.
And to wizards.
So I want to talk about, because you all have such a keen ear as to what's going on in the city. This is, the next great big city in the United States. Our city's on fire. But because our city's on fire, which is a wonderful thing for us watching Miami as Miami natives, we are growing out of our city. And as a result of the influx of people that are coming in, people like us that were born and raised here cannot afford to live here anymore. And what's kind of sad in my eyes is that they can't afford to go to the schools we went to, or there's no space. Talk to me about that, Danny.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this publicly, these are growing pains, but they're positive growing pains, right? I look at the benefit to all of those things. I have colleagues across the country that have, a very different experience. You see the people from the Northeast, fleeing. Obviously, we have an election that happened, earlier this week that will potentially provoke more migration from New York, outside of New York. It's not necessarily to Florida, but just generally away from New York. Because of certain policies, right? And so, I think that is a good thing, right? That we are growing as a community. I think it's important that we put in, plans for that growth. And part of that is school, right? I think, one is affordability and the other is education, right? Those are two critical components that I think that we need to face. And, creating jobs that people can actually earn enough money to continue to live here and to sustain themselves here. And so those are like our main challenges, I think, here in our community. And I think we're up to the task. I mean, we've really come a long way. I think the growth that we've experienced here has been exponential, especially in the last 5 years. And I think the Miami that we're seeing today, we won't even recognize 5 years from now.
Yeah, I think we're in the second inning on what we're going to see right now with Miami's growth.
Ryan, you're in commercial real estate, and you have a lot in New York in your Rolodex. Talk to me about what you're going to see in the next 5 years, especially with the elections that just took place. You are constantly telling me that we're going to be, well, actually, you're telling me always that we're the fifth borough of New York. Do you agree or disagree? Sixth borough, sorry.
Sixth borough, 1,000%. But we're also the hub for LATAM and for Europe, and we're seeing a lot of that as well. So I represent owners of office buildings, and since post-COVID, there was an incredible migration, mostly from New York, Chicago, and California. And I mean, there's been over 1.6 million square feet of new to market tenants to this market, and we're really only 45 million feet. That's a lot. It's never happened before. And these companies are are massive. It's Orlando Bravo moving his headquarters. It's Ken Griffin moving Citadel to Miami. There's 20 different groups I can tell you about. And I think that now that these groups have moved here, young kids that graduate from college and they want to go into finance, or they want to go into whatever, food group, it will either be New York, Chicago, or the big cities. Now Miami's like top of their list. And for all the reasons that we know growing up here, I mean, the quality of life, I mean, just it's unbelievable. And so we're seeing that happen more and more, where the companies are here and now the talent's here, and it's just going to scale tremendously. Right. So
I had a conversation this morning at breakfast with Jim Cassell. So his family has been here since 1908, he told me.
So they were here when it was Miami.
When it was Miami. So he was telling me, interestingly, that he used to write an op-ed in the Herald for like 10 years, and one of the commentaries that he made was about, and he served as a resource, to families at his time during his generation, and I know his kids went to school with you at Ransom. So it was an article that he wrote about trying to convince our generation to come back to Miami, because you had folks that were graduating from the schools here, going, the best and brightest would go away, like you did, go to Columbia, and then, they'd start their careers in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Chicago, San Francisco, and it was hard pressed to see them come back. And so, that article then was trying to convince them to come back. Today, a lot of people, to your point, they want to stay here. They want to stay here for college. They want to go away and come back. And I'm actually having conversations with folks who have their kids, they're from the Northeast, their kids have been going to UM, and these are big people, big families, that they don't want to go back to New York. They want to stay here in Miami. So that kind of addresses one of the comments that you're asking about. How do people afford to live here? I mean, obviously, it's important to have jobs here that generate enough income for people to stay here, right? And so that's one of the major issues that I think, we need to address, and you're seeing it.
Pepe, the private school voucher, is it helping a Miami native or not?
I have mixed feelings about it. I think it's very good for a lot of people. The step-up scholarship was expanded in recent years to allow anybody that's putting their kids in private school, so long as a private school accepts it, to get somewhere between $7,000 and $9,000 a year, depending on the child's age. And a lot of people are taking it, but a lot of schools are also raising their costs.
Right.
So I can tell you that in a lot of the private schools, you have north of 95% of the parents that are taking advantage of the scholarship. But if the scholarship's $7,000 and the tuition's gone up $7,000, what was the benefit? So, I've been a voice with the schools that I'm affiliated with and that I know well, trying to convince them to keep the costs low. I've also been an advocate for board members of schools that are not accepting the scholarship to accept it, because it does make a significant impact and levels the playing field for a lot of people. And, it's a little bit of a controversial scholarship. If you're making $5 million a year, do you really need a scholarship to send your kid to private school? But the counter is that person who's paying $5 million a year is paying tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes that are being injected into the public school system. And if you're not taking advantage of the public school system, is that equitable? So it's a conversation that will continue to happen in Tallahassee. It's been very successful, but schools are capped. It's not like Columbus or St. Brendan's or Belen can accept 500 new students. So you still have a logjam of people that want their kids to go to these schools, and you're seeing a massive amount of new people applying. So the wait lists are getting longer. The schools are being more selective. That part of it becomes more of a meritocracy, because now it's not only about whether you could afford the school, it's about
whether you deserve
to be there, and whether you're an exceptional student from an exceptional family.
And that's going to be the challenge that I see when I speak to, groups out of New York that are thinking about either expanding down here or relocating completely. Families in New York are not going to pick up when, leave their clubs, leave their schools, leave their friends, unless they're guaranteed they're going to get a spot. I mean, during COVID, I was on the Ransom board. I probably had 25 emails and 50 calls of random cold calls saying, hey, how much can I pay you to help get my kid into Ransom or into Gulliver? And it's a real issue.
I believe it.
And we got to find space, right? So like today.
So how much do you charge? Not enough.
if he did charge, he would not be complaining about tuition for his 3 kids.
Yeah, 3 kids with tuition stuff.
Exactly.
But today I'm meeting with the head of school at Ransom at 2:30 to talk about an opportunity to perhaps expand at Freedom Park, which is an incredible project that's happening with the Moss family in Beckham. It's a gigantic area where they're building the stadium. There's going to be office space, and there's a parcel for a school. So we're negotiating right now with major schools out of New York, private, charter schools, and seeing if some of these local schools like a Ransom, Palmer, Gulliver, etc., would want to expand.
Yeah. So as far as the vouchers are concerned, obviously I think it's been, productive in a sense that it's given people who did not have the option of parochial schools or private schools the option to, to pay for it, right? They just wouldn't be able to do it, because of their economic conditions or economic circumstances. But to your point, it has created a logjam in terms of seats, right? And so, there is wait lists across the community in every school. I mean, charters have had because everybody wants to go to the charters. If they're good, high-performing charters, it's free, right? Alternatively, you go to a parochial, which if you get your voucher, you can pay a certain portion, if not all of the tuition, and you make up the difference, right? And so people who wanted to have a faith-based education, they have access to it if they maybe weren't able to do it because of their economic circumstances. And then the other privates, obviously, you have some kind of conditions, assuming that they accept the tuition voucher, which some schools don't. But, that's the opportunity, I think, today for, private schools or, people that are trying to innovate like Alpha schools or, any one of these schools that's trying to do a technology-based, learning curriculum. But we need it desperately, right? So it's one of these things that I think we need to really try to find and attract more of those so that we can continue to help bring people to Miami.
It's happening. I mean, we have a specialist at Cushman who one of his main roles is trying to work with the county and the city to find land or older buildings that the county owns to either, reposition to build new schools or what have you. And it's happening. They're being very proactive. It's just going to take some time.
It takes time, yeah. And it's expensive, by the way.
Oh, no doubt.
I mean, because real estate obviously is very expensive.
Yeah.
So to the extent that they're buying it or leasing it, it's going to cost a lot of money, and then you got to translate that into tuition.
Right? One of the things I was going to mention was one of the unintended consequences of scholarship is because you have such a robust wait list at every school, what happens when you don't get into your first school? And so that's when people start really scrambling, because if you are applying at Palmer or Ransom or St. Brendan's or Belen or Columbus, whatever the school is that's a private school, if your kid doesn't get in, chances are that the next school will not be excited about taking your child because they weren't their first choice.
Sure. Right.
So they have their own wait list. So there's a lot of kids that are probably on the cusp, on the margins. You have 100 kids, 200 kids, 300 kids in an entry class. What happens to the 301st kid that might actually be exceptional, but, their parents are not alumni, or, the parish priest didn't write a letter. Now they're on the out, and they're having to go to neighborhoods very far away from them, schools that they're not familiar with. And it's a scary thing for parents, like the desperation of the calls that I get is it's overwhelming.
It's also crazy to see how far a parent will drive to go to the school that they want to go to. I'm still blown away by parents on Key Biscayne that are driving all the way down to Palmer Trinity. I don't know what time they wake up. God bless them.
Or they have helicopters.
No, but seriously, in today's world with traffic, I can get to my kid's school in 20 minutes. And this happened to me yesterday, and I'm still very salty about it, so I am going to talk about it. My daughter has decided that she's going to take her sweet-ass time in the morning to get ready because all of a sudden her hair has to be on point. So she takes up until the last second. We missed the bus. I watched the bus pull out of the circle, and I drove behind the bus the entire way to school. I was not happy. It took me an hour and a half to get home. It was the worst drive home ever. Makes me laugh because when my kids were in elementary and I would do the drive home, I developed a love of podcasting because I would listen to podcasts coming home. That's a thing of the past now because my kids take the bus.
Sure. Well, now you have time to have your own podcast.
Well, yeah. Now I come here and I record it myself. But with that said, traffic is becoming a major issue.
Problem.
Major issue. And people will go anywhere to go to the right school right now. how are we going to relieve the traffic on the streets, you guys? Because this is getting out of control.
It's an unsolvable problem. The city was designed at a time where there were a lot less people. The grid was not meant for this capacity. And unfortunately, we're seeing budget cuts at the state and local level in a way that there will not be an easy solution anytime soon. The county has been talking for a long time about a plan for transit. It's unfunded. It's underfunded. It's going to be very tough. I think that the future of Miami is a work, play, live environment where you live near where you work. That is the only thing that makes life a little easier. It's why in New York, with a density as high as they have, people survive, because you have your corner grocery store, you have your local restaurant, and you have your local laundry shop. In Miami, because we were not planned in a way like other big municipalities, people have to drive very far. And the streets are congested, and that's not getting any easier anytime soon. I am optimistic that we have very smart people that are trying to figure it out. I'm pessimistic that there just isn't funding. And I don't think we're in a state where people are ready to pay more taxes to get better and more roads.
Right.
We're a low tax state. Our state budget is half, even though we're bigger, half of New York's. If you live in New York City, which, by the way, has pretty bad traffic.
Mm-hmm.
But they have options. They have public transportation.
They do have, that they inherited.
They have a system.
Because it was smartly planned, and it was, we have limestone under us.
Yeah.
Right, so we can't go under. We can't go underground.
And water. I mean,
And we're not sending our kids on the metro at this point in time.
So Danny and I were in Asia in January, and we learned the story that a young person, I don't know if you remember the story clearly, about how their ferry came to be that connected the islands. Why aren't we using water ferries in Miami yet? Well, because that is uncharted territory. We can get so much somewhere faster if we were on a ferry, and everybody else does it. Why can't we?
So I think it's a combination of things, Chris. It's a multimodal system of transportation, right? It's not just ferry. I think we should absolutely have that as an alternative to your point about like Key Biscayne, for instance, or even Miami Beach. The Barrier Islands, it would be great to have a passenger ferry. By the way, just like San Francisco, right? You have the Embarcadero, you can hop on it and go to Sausalito or go to as far as Novato today, right? So it would be amazing for us to have that. And you could hop on the ferry from Key Biscayne and go to Palmetto Bay or go down to North Key Largo or whatever have you. Mm-hmm. That would be amazing. But it's not just that. It's have, again, train stops. I think we're fixing it on the eastern periphery of the county, where you have Brightline that goes obviously all the way now to Orlando. You're having more stops along the urban core in the Wynwood Design District, Little River area. But again, that doesn't solve the problem for the people out in the western portion of Miami-Dade County. We don't have rail spurs that run along 8th Street, along Flagler, along Miller, along Sunset, and that will never get done. I mean, the reality is, we're not going to exercise eminent domain, one, because we don't have the money to pay for what the value of real estate is along those corridors, for sure, and people will go crazy, right? So I don't think that's ever going to get solved. But what we're seeing is, and I'm sure you can talk a little bit about it in terms of like office and kind of where people work, but we are going now and creating urban centers and urban cores in different parts of the community so that you can do what Pepe's suggesting, right, is live, work, and play. In the western part of Miami-Dade County, that's one of the things that's being discussed now. And you're seeing that in the Gables, the Business Improvement District in Coral Gables, and you're seeing that in different parts of the county where now you can actually stay close to where you live.
Well, that's what we're seeing in the office front. There's all these peri-urban locations like the Grove, you have Wynwood, you have Design District, you have, Brickell downtown, Coral Gables. And, decision makers that are coming in and leasing office space and paying crazy rates, they want to work where they live. They want to be able to leave their office and go to their kid's baseball game or lacrosse game and not, be downtown and have to leave an hour and a half earlier to fight the traffic. And so to your point, it's like, how do we build these communities and all these different peri-urban locations where you have the schools, where you have the fields? It's a major problem right now.
Yeah.
I'm concerned because you didn't give me an answer to how you're going to fix my traffic.
No, it's not going to get fixed. I mean, look, again,
I have one. There has been some talk. I'm not a part of it, but I know of it with the boring company which is Elon Musk's company.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they had the capability to bore tunnels deep underground and have autonomous vehicles go through it.
Yeah.
If that were to happen here, that could be a significant addition to Miami's traffic solution.
We're not going to see that in our lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know.
They're doing it now.
Yeah.
They're doing it now in Vegas. You can go right now. There's boring tunnels
Yeah.
that people are using for autonomous driving.
I mean, I would love to get into that with you and how our city might be sinking and how that's going to come into play. But we could just talk for hours about that because that would be a concern for many. If we're a sinking city, why are we going underground?
I mean, I know just enough to be dangerous. And I can tell you that limestone is limestone, right?
Yeah.
So, if you reinforce it when you build it, it actually probably is stronger than what was there before. And I don't think that we're sinking per se. I mean, we're not going down. The water's coming up, right? The water level's coming up.
Right.
And so, whether that penetration from the ocean, which, we have a water table, gets affected or not by a boring, it's yet to be seen. But from everything I have heard and everything I've learned, I don't think that would be one of the reasons for us to stop doing
To
that.
not do it.
Let's dig.
Yeah.
So, question for you. For my kids, Miami will be what?
For your kids or for my
For
kids?
your kids.
For our kids?
For the next generation?
Yeah, look, for our kids, Miami will be a bastion of opportunity. It'll be a gateway to Latin America and the world. It'll be a fun and sexy place to tell people that you're from. I think that it'll be a much more entrepreneurial city with more tech innovators and AI-centric companies than we can ever imagine. I think more people will be entrepreneurs in the future, including our kids, than what currently exists now. That is the difference in my mind between the industry of today and the industry of tomorrow. The Industrial Revolution, everything changed. We are in an AI revolution and everything will change again.
Yeah.
Not just here, but everywhere. But Miami just happens to be one of the epicenters where that conversation is really happening.
Right. Danny, what do you think Miami's secret sauce is?
I think our secret sauce is our entrepreneurial drive, mostly driven by immigrants. I think our immigrant heritage, whether you're Cuban, Venezuelan, Colombian, you come from someplace else and you were fleeing some kind of restrictive environment, whether that was political or economic, and you came here trying to make it happen, right? And so I think people that are growing up here in Miami, they tend to innovate and they tend to have the grit to get things done. And I think that's really our secret sauce here in Miami.
Ryan, what does a good Miami dad do today?
Good Miami dad. Take your kids to every Canes football game.
That's a bad dad.
Especially after losing to SMU last week.
The worst dad is to take him to Dolphins games,
Yeah.
which is what I do.
Which is what you do. You never miss a game. You, your dad, your
My dad's had season tickets to the Miami Dolphins for 50 long years.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Does he have like a special plaque on the seat?
Not a thing.
Not a thing.
But the last championship was in 74.
Okay.
My dad got his tickets in 75. So there might be
Wow.
a Jose Diaz Sr. curse in the Miami Dolphins.
Oh my gosh.
He's just a glutton for punishment.
That's funny. Closing questions. Poor Pepe is so sick here today, and we're just so grateful he's here. I know I'm going to owe him one.
Well, I'm going to owe you all one when I get you sick.
So
Ryan, how about that one?
poor
Talk to
Ryan.
Sophia. She'll be upset.
You have to
poor
deny.
Sophia. How do you personally keep the perspective of gratitude without guilt in front of your kids today?
Look, I'm incredibly grateful of the life that I've had. I feel blessed to have grown up here and, exposure to the outdoors and water and just great people. And, I've tried to project that onto my kids. And I don't think that there should be a level of guilt. I think that that's, living with gratitude, to your point, and kind of one of the things that you project is just being grateful for every connection that you have, for every experience that you have. And I try to do that, with happiness and with grace with my kids, So I try not to even focus on the guilt aspect of it. And then, when you get around the community and you do realize that there is obviously a very different part of Miami where there is a lot of need, is just making them, giving them exposure to that and realizing that, the life that they live, for the most part, is very different than other people, and, to whom much is given, much is expected. And the fact that, you have access to all of these things, you need to be grateful and you need to give back. And so that's how I try to offset that.
Well, I'm so grateful that you guys are part of my tribe and you guys are helping us raise our children. You're the uncle. You're the Jewish uncle in my house, the Cuban Jewish uncle. You're my daughter's godfather. Without you guys, it takes a village to raise these kids.
Absolutely.
And like Adam Newman said the other day at the American Business Forum, he says that when he moved to Miami, he was so happy because he loved this community and this atmosphere to raise he has 6 kids, you guys. Him and Rebecca have 6 kids. And he says that raising Miami's secret sauce is community, and I couldn't agree more.
I totally agree with that. And I think that is the secret sauce, because I've met, a ton of families that have come down from different cities. And the first thing they say is that everyone can, have their arms open, they're welcoming, everyone's an ambassador to the city, and they're entrenching themselves in our community, whether it's philanthropic, whether it's just getting involved in the community in any other way, supporting hospitals, supporting charities. And I think that's a very special thing for Miami, because I know a lot of cities, it doesn't work, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we have the old Miami now with the new Miami. It's kind of like the tides coming in together, and we're all growing and rowing in the same direction now. So I think it's very special.
Well, thank you guys for being here today and taking times out of your busy schedules. I hope we can do this again soon. I don't know when everybody's calendars are going to collide, and you will be able to give me an hour of your time again. So I'm so grateful. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Love being here. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah,
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for joining us today, and we will be back in the coming weeks with another episode. Bye, everybody.